There is a massive difference between speed and velocity, right? So velocity is heading in the right direction expeditiously with force and impact. So when you think about go-to-market like a marketing move, and you think about what's the real bottleneck when it comes to having this incredible cadence of high quality, perfectly aligned with the ICP content, driving incredible opportunities into pipe. You say the constraints firepower. I just don't have enough people. We don't have enough time.
GTMAI Podcast with Jonathan and Coach K. Tune in now, don't delay. Catch the future on display. In a world of
good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is I, Jonathan Kvarfordt, aka Coach K, and this is the GTMAI Podcast. I am pleased, honored, humbled, and excited to have my man, Tim Sanders, the VP of Research Insights of G2. So excited to have you. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Nice to be with you today, Jonathan.
Yeah. I saw you present at the Grammarly thing. It was about a month ago or so, something like that. You presented the Grammarly AI conversation, which is fascinating. And so I loved what we had to say, had to have you on the podcast. And before we get into all the good stuff, I want to suck your brain out of all the information we can get out of you. I want to know about you. I want to know your personal journey. As I like to say to my guests, I want to know the non-LinkedIn, non-resume version of Tim. Like, where'd you come from and why you're doing what you're doing now? What's your passion? Kind of give me the outside look.
That's a pretty loaded question. I really like that. Let me think about this. Yeah. My passion is really, well, besides my family, my passion is just a couple of things in life in no particular order. I spend a lot of time thinking about researching and motivating others to research artificial intelligence. I'm the kind of person throughout my career that loves to capture exponential trends that improve our lives and get behind it. I've been doing it my whole life. And the other thing I really dig is my passion for music with an emphasis on analog synthesis.
Yeah.
I think to think about like my career of a checkered past. If you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see I've done a bunch of things, but whatever. I would tell you that maybe the most relevant experience here is that my go-to-market career breakthrough. I was recently thinking about this experience. I'll share it here on camera for those of you watching. I went to work for Mark Cuban in 1997 after he founded AudioNet. It became broadcast.com. That's where I discovered Google around 1998, right after it came out. Netscape had captured my imagination along with the rest of the world. But Google organized the information, unlike the rest of the world, and it made content accessible to me. And as a sales professional, I evangelized the idea that wherever you were in your career, you could have an edge over everybody else if you just figured out how to become what I called a query master. Because you should never ask a prospect a question that could have been answered online. And so this is me, this picture here in my 30s, presenting at the Yahoo 2000 sales kickoff. And that's where my whole career like really took off. And then after Yahoo, I wrote several books, including Love is the Killer App. Most recently, I went to work at G2, where you go for software. I'm sure you're familiar with that marketplace. And there, I'm their vice president of research insights.
I love it. We were just before we got on, we were talking about all your music stuff and showed me your rig, which I'm actually a little bit jealous of. I have my.
Should we show the home audience? Why don't we do this?
I think we should.
Why don't we just make people that are only listening to this be like, man, I've got to watch this thing. I got to watch this thing. And stop just listening to it. Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is my pride and joy, my synthesizer. I set up my reel-to-reel recorder and then my little work area studio. So that's just right here in my Zoom room, just right next to me. So there you go.
Yeah, for people who are not in that world, to be able to take the analog and you said you take your music through actual recording tape.
Into patch cords. There's a whole like rig of patch cords over here. So everything's set up and you never get the sound back again twice. There's no such thing as a preset in that world. Really fun stuff.
It's definitely a purist move, which I love. It means you capture things.
It's literally the opposite of AI. It couldn't be more opposite of artificial.
Anti-AI. I love it. I've been fascinated to ask you a bunch of questions, which we can go in a lot of different ways. But obviously one of them is your passion around C-suite, board level people talking about AI, but more specifically around marketing. I'd love to get your take on just what you told me before about your passion around that. Tell me what you're seeing in the marketplace from high level and what's fascinating you.
I am seeing marketing leaders and sales leaders both leaning in when it comes to thinking about how artificial intelligence can expedite workflow or as a tool dramatically improve the velocity of go-to-market. Now, when I think about AI in the context of sales, marketing, product, and success, my personal view of GTM,
Yeah.
I don't think of artificial intelligence as a weed whacker for payroll. It's not a replacement for people. One of the best examples I've heard is I talked to a youthful person at our company kickoff, and he came up on video game culture. And I had been evangelizing this idea of put ChatGPT 4.0 in your workflow, resist Google search. Now, I'm not saying that against the company. I'm saying it against the old bad habit. Try something else. Try 4.0, try Perplexity Pro. Deep research will change your life. And he says to me, I've been doing that. He goes, it reminds me of this one game I used to play where you're issued like this pistol and then you can pick up this machine gun and you can take care of yourself in a room, but you got to shoot the bad guy 6 or 7 times. And then you pick up the nuclear cannon. You take out an army with that.
Yeah.
He says, that's what Perplexity Pro Deep Research felt like when I was trying to do a customer persona report before a big call with their C-suite. And that's when the light goes off for me. I think the way that go-to-market leaders should be thinking of artificial intelligence, whether it's machine learning, which is now the Nickelback of AI, right? Even if you like it, you'd never tell your friends, or generative AI or agents. The way you should be thinking about this is it will help you deliver more velocity. Now, that's different than being fast. A lot of times in AI, we say, I do things 30% faster. Who cares? You can do something faster and then pick up your phone and watch 10 TikTok videos. The organization's not getting any output from you being faster. There is a massive difference between speed and velocity, right? So velocity is heading in the right direction expeditiously with force and impact. So when you think about go-to-market like a marketing move, and you think about what's the real bottleneck when it comes to having this incredible cadence of high quality, perfectly aligned with the ICP content, driving incredible opportunities into pipe. You say the constraints, firepower. I just don't have enough people. We don't have enough time. And that's just BS. It's just not true. It's a prediction problem. How do I know this? Well, one of my favorite set of books here on AI is behind me called Prediction Machines, Power and Prediction. Professor Ajay at Rotman School in Toronto talks about this idea that if you've been to London and you've ever sat in the back of a London cab, it's a pretty cool ride, great personality, they never get lost. But you might not know that to be a driver for London cab, you got to go to school for 3 to 4 years. It's called the knowledge. And the knowledge teaches you every possible route throughout London during different times of day, different scenic things you can point out. And it's a real big bottleneck if you think about it. So several years ago in London, they had incredible mobility challenges to get from Piccadilly Circus to Heathrow during rush hour, to which London Cab would say the bottleneck is what? People. Don't have enough machines, don't have enough people. But Waze comes out, Uber realizes it and launches Uber in the United Kingdom. There's now literally 10x more drivers, no mobility problem. It turned out that it was always a prediction problem. And that's what I think happens for marketers. Whatever it is you're trying to do in GTM, if you're just not delivering on your metrics, I challenge you to reconsider that your bottleneck is not people and bandwidth. Your bottleneck is artificial intelligence resistance or reluctance. That's your bottleneck. And what I particularly call it, Jonathan, is it's a trust gap. And I've been studying this. We could talk about it later, but I think trust gaps are really what GTM leaders need to solve. And I am seeing more and more GTM leaders, especially the younger ones, starting to really integrate it thoughtfully into workflow upstream, and they're exceeding their own expectations.
I had this going along with this thing around trusting of AI. I did a study through the GTMAI Academy in January, and the survey had come to thing around this concept of trust. And what was fascinating, I'll see if I can find my graphic I can show as part of this whole thing we're doing, was that the more someone is experienced with AI, the less that trust is an issue. And the bigger strategy becomes the concern. So it's like, it has this direct scale, like saying the more experienced you are, the less you're worried about security because you understand the concept. But you're more on the strategy side, which is fascinating.
I think that's
Uh,
really fascinating. And while you look for
uh,
that, let me illustrate, like,
yeah.
what are the stakes here? If you look at it here, what I've been studying, Jonathan, is
Oh,
the
yeah.
world of cloud computing and what the trust gaps really are and how you can measure it, right? So if you see this graphic here, the x-axis is degree and the y-axis is time. And so what I've been studying is the reliability of a technology, including its safety and efficiency, and the rate of adoption. And so what you're seeing here would be a general illustration of cloud computing between 2006 and 2023.
Yeah.
Many organizations insisted on more expensive, less effective premise computing, which took longer to stand up any microservices because they either thought it was a risk from info security, they thought they wouldn't have access to it because it was in the cloud, or it didn't work as well in terms of things like latency. But the reality is by about 2010 and 11, you had no excuses other than just straight up resistance. Our inference research suggests that the average loss, they call it dead waste lost, that US companies alone experience because of this trust gap, because of cloud, $44 billion every year on average between 2006 and last year. Now, this is cloud. And when you think
Right.
about the loss of opportunity, velocity, whatever it is you want to call it,
Mhm.
for AI and for agentic AI, which is right up there with getting in the back of a Waymo,
Right.
the gap's not 44 billion, man. It's going to be probably 5 to 10x higher. The stakes are high. And Jonathan, your research is spot on. I find out that there's a couple of things that go into trust or the opposite of distrust, right? There's a great book for all of you watching. Go look up the book Catalyst by Jonathan Berger. He's a professor at Wharton, and he studied why people will not change even if something's better. And one of the things he talks about is we have an endowment to the status quo. So we really like the way things are. It takes a lot for us to give up on that sense of endowment. But one of the other things he would talk about is the idea of we need corroborating evidence, right? So when you use a thing and you use it enough, it's almost riding a bike. Yeah, you got training wheels. You take the training wheels off, you don't fall over. You never put the training wheels back on. So I believe, and this is a thesis I am now researching, I could take an executive in GTM who says, I don't use any of these generative AI tools, and I don't trust them in my workflows, say for sales development or for content creation or even for critical customer service. If they used it in their natural workflow, I believe for 90 days, they would recant this immediately and at least start an aggressive set of pilots. I guarantee it. I think the other thing, though, is you hear a lot in AI research about explainability. Can you explain to me how the AI did the thing? I think for leaders, it goes a click higher. Leaders that understand, how does artificial intelligence work? What purpose does the machine think it has? What are the economics behind artificial intelligence and why are they truly transformative to my budgets? Once they grasp those things, I think trust follows quickly. I think that up until recently, especially when it was machine learning, you had to go talk to IT about it, have an engineering degree to use it. I think it's been a black box, and I think that's part of why we don't trust it.
Yeah, this concept is fascinating. You see this thing? This is crazy. So it's technical concerns. And the more someone was beginning, the more the concerns match. And as you go down more experience, then strategy becomes the concern versus technical concerns or security. Fascinating. I was like, what? I mean, it's funny when you think about it, it makes sense. Now, when I listen to people, I do classes on AI and I have people talk or ask me questions, I always know now, based on the questions they ask me, like, I don't think you've used AI enough because you're asking questions that would dictate that's where you are. So fascinating. So
yeah, I think it's fascinating. I would say one last thing on trust that is interesting. And I don't know if you've covered this, but there was a study that came out last year. It was Washington State University. They did it for a travel association, but it has widespread applicability. And they studied consumers, but they also studied people that use technical medical equipment, et cetera. And what they've learned is that when you market artificial intelligence enablement of a product like AI inside, whether it's a toothbrush or an X-ray device, believe it or not, consumers want it less on average because they experience emotional distrust. We've completely overestimated people's love love relationship with machines. Think about self-driving cars. One of the things that I'm thinking a lot about now is, do marketers really need to do what their CEOs are doing on investors' calls and selling AI? Or should they instead sell the transformative benefit that it delivers? So if Steve Jobs were alive today, I do not think he would ever say artificial intelligence in this phone. What would he say? 1,000,000 songs in your pocket, like he said when he came out with the iPod.
Right.
What did Sony say? 5 gigs in your pocket. To which I say, oh my gosh, is it going to explode? So I think it's really important to revisit the fact that we conflate all the times executives talk about AI being important with that being something that people actually trust, and get back to what we've always done, as Seth Godin would say, what do they want? And focus on that.
Yeah, we have a whole podcast on this topic because it's fascinating to me. I'm going to switch gears because I want to pick on your marketing, and I know you have a lot of insights there. 2 questions, and we can start with one and then go to the next one. But the first one would be, to prep your brain a little bit, is this whole concept around using a Perplexity or Search GPT or whatever the case is to find stuff. So what does that do as far as SEO, and how do we put out content that gets captured or read by
I
that
follow
stuff?
this.
Yeah, there's that side. And then the other side is more about process. Well, I'll get to that in a second. So let's dive into more about search. Because like you said, I don't know if I've used Google for months. I use all these other tech of AI search. What do you feel like that's going to mean for people who are marketing and putting out content to make sure you can please the bots, so to speak?
It's going to be something we have to think about.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to think about it. I think we're going to have to think about it a lot over the next 2 years. So let's talk a little bit why AI search is important. And I look at some of this research, and I find some of the research I've seen out there troubling in this regard, where we continue to talk a lot about only 2% of people have actually started to use it. And there's really not that much migration yet. You'll hear people say that. It's just a few points. Right now, Google's still doing great.
Right.
Jonathan, as of this moment, there has not been comprehensive research done on software and SaaS buyers and how they search for things. Okay, so you and I both know a few of those people.
Few.
And the people on the buying committees at companies involving technology, they're early adopters, okay? They are way more likely to be early adopters of Perplexity Pro Deep Research or ChatGPT 4o, search, et cetera. So I really believe that the number's not 10% or 20%. I believe that right now about 30% of search volume that's being done in relationship to researching and buying a product, connecting with marketing content, is going on through Gen AI search. Now, why do I know this? There's a lot of statistics that we've gathered to really give us signals. I mean, even at G2, our buyer behavior report, we found that 1/3 of all buyers said the biggest bottleneck was search in their buying journey. It was right up there with talking to a salesperson in terms of things that were painful and non-productive.
Right.
Accenture found out that people reported they're 30% more productive, and they're finding more accuracy in their research. There was a great study at University of Hong Kong. It's international, but it's still like really interesting to me. People are reporting they're 158% more productive on a deadline using generative AI search. And that was last year, and it's gotten a lot better. So that's the setup. Like, what's the solution? If I'm a CMO watching this and I've been writing massive checks for AdWords or Bing words, and I know who you are because you also have fax machines. If you're writing massive checks right now to Google and all of your cadence now is like SEO and all the responding to algorithm changes, you should take at least 10% of your budget and peel it off and put it into things like generative engine optimization efforts. Just go Google GEO services. There's a lot of people out there that can really help you rethink how you show up in attribution during an answer engine return. Okay, let's stop and define what I'm saying here. I'm getting slangy here. There's a big difference between search and answer. So search is based on a query, and then the query hits a database, and there's a business model that's overlaid on the database. We call that the tyranny of blue links. But more importantly, there's algorithms like PageRank, which really looks at a lot of things, and you know about gems and all the other things that are going on now in SEO. Answer engines are different. Answer engines are leveraging natural language processing and inferencing and now reasoning to give you the best answer using brute force. And it's a different process than how algorithms work on search. And they are not laying a business model over it. They're trying to give you the single answer. What's the goal? The goal of the machine is a zero-click search. The goal of the machine is for you to figure out how to get a one-shot answer, not click a bunch. So that's different. What are they looking for? That's what we've really been trying to figure out. There's startups out there. There's one, you can go to their website. By the way, they're not on G2 Grid, so I'm not violating our Switzerland covenant here. They're called Try Profound. If you haven't heard of them, they're a Coastal Adventures backed startup. Love these guys. You can look at where your brand sits in a diagram of strength against people looking for your answers related to what you do. And you can really see how you're showing up against everybody else across the different models. It is mind-blowing. So generative engine optimization helps you think about your content strategy or your website strategy in a way where not only do the robots see it and crawl it and look at it as a source of authority when they give answers, and if you choose just a few sources, you're likely going to show up.
That's right. Yep.
And so that's a piece of it.
Awesome.
There's two other quick ideas to show what I've been learning by talking to the folks at Profound. You want to show up there, owned audience. That's the number one way to show up, because that's that. If you have an algorithm using brute force to try to give the best consensus answer, not the most popular answer, the best answer, big difference. Then having a large owned audience with a lot of incoming tentacles, not links, conversations, those owned audiences tend to rise to the top of that attribution, so that when someone's clicking on a link and is one-shot AI search, you're that link. So you're still getting back your traffic. The last thing, and that's obviously thought leadership content, long-form content, solving problems content, writing most of your content to answer questions. So think of the whole YouTube world. If you took the whole YouTube world and pour it into GPT, except in terms of natural language characters, that's a big win. By the way, that's what some marketers are doing, and they're seeing early results. They take every YouTube video they've made on how to use a product or a service or solve a problem related to the product or service, take all the transcripts, create blog post, allow crawl. So a lot of your websites are disallowing robot text, TEXT file, go talk to IT if you are. That's a scarcity move that will keep you out. If you don't believe me, look at the traffic for Reddit and Hearst and other people that were like, did deals with OpenAI and Gemini. Here's our content. So the one last thing I would say here that's important is user-generated content is really the easiest way to get going. So for those of you, you need to invest in communities, you need to enable user-generated content, et cetera. I mean, there's just a bunch of ways to approach it, but the pragmatic way for CMOs watching here is 10% this year, 30% next year. Move the money, because you're going to get caught buying Yellow Pages ads in 2010, which they were still selling to certain people. And you don't want to be that, CMO. So it's easy to get started and you still have time. That is the good news, but it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. Funny enough, I was selling Yellow Pages back in 2008, back when,
dude, you could not have a store and not have that in many markets when I was growing up. You wouldn't succeed.
No, you wouldn't. But that was back when the internet came out. And I remember thinking to myself, that's one reason why I stopped selling Yellow Pages. Cause I'm like, this isn't the way to go. It should be the internet. It's way better.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I remember I talked to a friend of mine at Google, and he was talking a lot about how this concept around intent, kind of like you were talking about before, about how it's both the intent of the actual article or whatever content piece and the intent of the user searching, and they have to match the best.
Ooh, I like
fascinating concept.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. But, and then the question is, like you said, it's like, what's the question you're answering, and how do you know what the intent is to answer the question is like crazy to think about it versus just keywords.
What I find is if you sell, I'll give you an example from SaaS because my head's wrapped around that now.
Yeah.
If you want to be attributed, usually you have to think about what's that answer engine experience from the user standpoint. So the user's going into a GPT and saying, and we'll use a music example because that feels safe. I'm a musician, I'm a producer, I'm really trying to make a decision between Logic as a digital audio workstation and Ableton as a digital audio workstation. And for context, I largely make rock and roll music, and I have a small studio, and I like to record drums with real microphones. And you should have a piece of content that you've developed, maybe partnering with an expert or a musician who uses that all the time to say if-thens. So, hey, if you're really trying to focus on acoustic music and you want that in the studio feeling on a bunch of different tracks at once and managing noise, maybe Logic's the right one with you. However, if you're an electronic musician and you're really trying to build up content entirely in the box, then Ableton might be a better solution for you. So I think this idea of creating long-form content, especially video plus natural language words on a screen that the robots can read, if you could produce that content to do that service on behalf of the artificial intelligence, and you become a great stop for them as the robots are trying to find the brute force best answer. When someone says, which of the two DAWs should I pick? And here's context. You should be able to, your content should
Right.
address that squarely. We've seen this already with YouTube effectiveness for brands that created the same kind of videos to solve problems in product use. I mean, it was a dramatic lift in their conversion rates and return traffic back to site. So I think we just have to start thinking that way. And if we want to show
Yeah.
up when a person's buying, we need to help them buy instead of trying to sell them stuff or in
Right.
addition
Get
to.
out of the way. Or in addition to. Let me end with this. That might be a good note to get your thoughts on, which is what I'm finding more and more is that I always think about the Henry Ford quote about how if I asked people what they wanted, they've told me faster horses or whatever that quote is. And just the creativity that is required to be able to use AI. It's like when you look at SaaS teams and the way they do things internally or even externally with their marketing or sales, it's the old way doing it faster versus where the new way of AI is like, there's a new process or new way to do things that we're not opening ourselves up to. Have you seen anything like that where people either are trying new things and finding success versus just trying to speed up the old way? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you make a great point. So I think that the difference between classification and inference or
Yeah.
suggestion and generation, the difference between the two is that in the old way, the machines helped you do things more efficiently. And in the new way, the machines help you do something you would have never been able to do before. Give you a classic example. So I was working with an analyst and we're trying to make a calculation about the size of a particular market that's really moving quickly 5 years from now. And unless you were an analyst at a firm that had a bunch of PhDs that you could sit in a room and get on whiteboards and go through that process, you would say that number is going to climb significantly next year. So keep your eye open. Marketers, you think that's going to spread? No. But
Yeah.
now using any reasoning model and in the right context data. So let's say you go use O1 Pro. It's available on the $20 plan. I am not an advocate in selling this. That's what I use. So go use O1 Pro and you feed it the right context data and you say, this is all the information I have in the market. Here's some rules as an economist that I have for looking at projections. Here's some comps, etc. I want you to show me all your reasoning steps, much like code. I want to check it and see if I like the chain of thought. Boom, you can come back. And for the first time, you can say, look, we believe based on the following context data that the market for this thing's going to be $120 billion in 4 years. So for those of you thinking about investing in it, we think that's a really good TAM. I would not have been able to make that projection if not for the power of inference. Classify would have said grows fast versus grows slow.
Right.
That's a dog,
Right.
that's a cat. Machine learning, suggestion machines like Waze. I think the real opportunity here is that go-to-market can accomplish things they never dreamed possible, especially for those with smaller workforces. And they keep
Yeah.
thinking that the limits to their possibilities is how much money and budget they're given. And it's not. It's about their imagination. I'll finish with this. You mentioned creativity and using AI. I believe that when it comes to go-to-market, which is largely driven by communications and creativity, the future belongs to the Rick Rubins and not the Nile Rodgers. Follow me on this for just a second. For those of you that have followed Rick Rubin, the Too Long Didn't Read is 30 plus platinum albums that he's had been involved with, and 9
Right.
Grammys personally as a producer. Okay, so the guy rocks, but he doesn't play an instrument, doesn't know anything about a mixing board, doesn't even try to keep up with plugins or compression. But once he was asked, what are you paid for? And he says, my confidence and taste has turned out to be very fruitful for my clients. The Rick Rubin economy is here. Artificial intelligence for the first time has decoupled prediction from judgment, so the machine can make the prediction and human beings own the judgment. That ability for you to know what good looks or sounds like and your confidence to put it into production instead of fiddling with it and losing valuable time will give you all the velocity to disrupt any process that you think you can't be successful in. So I think that's the real way to look at it. And yeah, so let's get away from faster, better, cheaper, and let's do better.
Yeah, going to your point earlier about velocity, there's a major difference between just going faster versus velocity and getting the sheer
yeah.
weight behind you there. That's a way different thing, which I don't think we've even realized the impact of that yet, because it's changing so much. And Yeah,
It's
just
true.
fascinating
It's
to see
true.
where
And
it's going to go.
I think about what we really need out of our contributors in go-to-market. We don't need them to be more productive. We need them to be more productive. We need them to be more effective. And this is critical because we have limited time horizons. When you think about what it takes to succeed in go-to-market, what you're really trying to do is you're really trying to show up for the party on time. Miss the party, you miss the market, because you can't make the party go later just because you showed up late, right? That's an analogy I use, but it's true. Compelling research would suggest that if you're 6 months late on a GTM product launch in SaaS, do you know how much profit you lose over the life of the product? 30%. 30% of the
Yeah.
profitability goes away from missing the go-to-market, full go-to-market, not just the product launch, the full cadence by 6 months. And the reason is simple: the market moves. So again, it's not faster, it's more effective, because just because you launch a product doesn't mean you showed up for the party in time. They didn't let you through the velvet rope. You weren't even dressed right. Go-to-market's a teamwork thing. And I think effectiveness is the challenge, because markets are getting shorter and shorter as people change their minds on what they want and new disruptive innovations come along every day.
Tim, I could literally have you on for a 3-hour podcast and not get bored, but dude,
Joe Rogan
because of your
style, we get
time-
worn out.
we get
Or
out,
Lex
we're worn
Friedman.
out there. Yeah. I just want to tell you, thank you. Like, fascinating to have you. Thank you so much. What's the best way people can get in touch with you? What do you prefer?
Just come get me on LinkedIn. Put in Tim Sanders and G2. Tim Sanders
Nice and easy.
G2.
I'll have your links and stuff in the show notes, obviously, but just making sure if people want to get you a hold there, I'll make sure we have all the stuff there. But Tim, nothing but a pleasure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Nice talking to you. See you.
Thanks for listening to the GTMAI Podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.